This is Intelligence Matters.
I'm Michael Allen with Beacon Global Strategies. Today I'm joined by Arnold Sinisalu, who served as the chief of the Estonian Internal Security Service from 2013 to 2023. Over his 3 decades of service in the ISS, he played a crucial role in fortifying Estonia's security and shaping its counterintelligence strategy. He was also involved in a number of high-profile captures by the Estonians of Russian agents. Mr. Sinisalu joins us today for a discussion on Russian subversion in Estonia and Eastern Europe. Stay with us as we talk to Arnold Sinisalu. Arnold, thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome, and thank you for having me.
Well, you're the perfect person, I think, to talk about a lot of issues, especially as they pertain to intelligence, because, of course, Estonia is on the front lines of Russian hostility, I would say. You also have been the subject, your country has, of gray war type tactics from Russia through the years. So before I get into specific questions, I wonder if you would just sort of give a background to our listeners here about Estonia's experience of late with Russia and maybe how the Baltics are dealing with Russia and just how aggressive are they trying to undermine your democracy and what else are they trying to achieve?
Preparing that show, I was thinking about how to explain, and I just remembered yesterday that actually it all started even before we regained independence. So 1989, 1990, 1991, before Estonia was regaining independence, we had series of explosions in front of some Soviet military factories and so on. It was a bit strange. And later, our colleagues discovered that there was a bunch of people trained by the Soviet military intelligence, GRU, already that time, to get some tensions in Estonia between Estonian-speaking population and Russian-speaking population. And we just discovered that around second half of 90s. And we published that story in our annual review 2000. There was a so-called negative hero Sleptsov who confessed that he, together with some other guys, did those explosions. And one of those left Estonia and he continued his fight in Moldova, in Transnistria. So that we can say on the basis of that leadership of Soviet Union or Russia basically never accepted collapse of Soviet Union. As later Putin said 2005 that greatest catastrophe of 21st century was collapse of Soviet Union. And it says a lot, and that's the reason why Russia has created so-called hotspots in Caucasus, in Transnistria, elsewhere. They also tried to create some small autonomous part of Estonia in 1993. And altogether, they never accepted our regaining of independence. And that's the background.
Well, as head of the Estonian Internal Service for 10 years, you must have been hunting Russian spies constantly. Can you give us some sense of how much Estonia was targeted by the Russians?
It's a huge number, but honestly, I guess Estonia is nothing so special for them. All the bordering countries are very interested for the Russians. And so we have been maybe more flexible. We've changed our legislation and so on. And I don't know the latest number, but there are around 30 people who are convicted for the collaboration with the Russian special services. Also, we managed to arrest 2 people and convicted them for working for the Chinese services. So altogether, maybe I need to say that the turning point for us was 2008 when we arrested our first traitor, quite famous in the bad way, Herman Simm.
Mm.
And there was a strategic decision made by our leadership that time that whenever there is chance and possibility, we will go to court, we prosecute those people, and we arrest them, we put them behind the bars. That this is most effective. It gives you a lot of leverage, and also it will be as a prevention for others. And the strategic decision was that we are not going to play those games with Russian so-called double games.
Mm.
And that was decided, and we just kept going like this.
Yeah, I see. So their interest is, of course, penetrating your government at the highest levels for espionage purposes, but also to destabilize Estonia, to try to keep you off balance. Are those the basic objectives of what Russia is up to?
Yes, of course. And same goes about the whole Europe. And same goes about the United States as well, and other states which is seen by the Russia as enemies or adversaries. And basically the whole West is adversary, if not to say that enemy. So yeah, the goals are pretty similar in every country.
So you mentioned how many people are under arrest. Give us some sense of how Estonia has had that amount of success. What are, obviously, don't tell us anything you shouldn't, but give us some sense of how you've been successful in finding Russian spies in your country.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to explain, but basically what we decided that it's not enough to just do intelligence. Our legislation was changed after Herman Simm was arrested. So 2013 became possible to use intelligence information as part of prosecution. And that helped us a lot. And we have been changing many times our legislation that since 2018, it's enough to convict person who is collaborating with Russian special services. And that's enough if you just say, yes, I will start working with you, but you haven't actually committed any crime directly against Estonia in that sense that you haven't started collect something, you haven't provided anything, but if you say that you are willingly start cooperating with them, that's a separate crime.
That's enough, yeah.
Yeah, that's enough because previously you had to prove a lot that there was intention and possibility and he had some access and so on. So I guess a huge part of that is definitely legislation. And other part, of course, people just had to work a lot, 24/7 sometimes, many weeks to get evidence. And if evidence was collected, then usually prosecutor office evaluated, are we having enough evidence to go and arrest person and start criminal investigation, or is it just our delusion that there is some crime? So that all together, and of course, thirdly, I have to say that our government acknowledged after 2008, after arrest of Simm, that we need to invest a lot to the counterintelligence and intelligence. So technical means, personnel resources, and so on, that we have to be grateful to our governments that we would have had all the necessary means to go after. And I guess that all together with the will of people in our services and in prosecutor office, and also cooperation with our friends in Europe and elsewhere, also in the United States, this all together helped us. And certainly at the
Yeah.
beginning we had a lot of help from US, UK, other big European services, and rest is now history.
Well, tell us this story of Sims, the traitor that you mentioned. How did you catch him? What was he up to?
So honestly, I wasn't that time part of that investigation, but what is known or what is a good example how things go wrong. So allegedly, Sim was sacked, not allegedly, he was sacked from head of police. He felt like traited by Estonian government, and while in holidays in North Africa, he was approached by the SVR, and the guy who approached was acquaintance of him during the Soviet time because Sim worked in militia. So he had already in Soviet time some contacts with KGB that time. And so when he returned to Estonia, he started soon working in MOD and worked many years, going to the pension with honors and so on. And through the international cooperation, we were able to prove that he worked more than 10 years for the SVR. And unfortunately, so far, he's the biggest security failure in NATO headquarters because Herman Simm position, the last position in MOD, was National Security Authority. So he had access to all the NATO secrets, which were given over to Estonia and sometimes even more.
I see. I see. Okay. Well, then that was a great find for you all. And let me ask you a little bit about Russia's Gray War. Also, Estonia is known for its advanced digital intelligence capabilities. How did that come to pass? I know this is part of Russia's gray zone activities, but could you tell our listeners a little bit about maybe the Russian cyber attacks and how you all were able to upgrade your defenses?
I guess we took cyber attacks very seriously after so-called April riots, what we had 2007, when literally Russians shut down our networks and there was huge attack of DDoS attacks. And since that, there was also government decision that we need heavily invest to our protection of cyber networks and so on. And nowadays, we can say that for many reasons, also technical development, that nobody's noticing anymore those DDoS attacks. But have to admit that most likely there is so many things we just can't notice. The Russians are highly capable of doing cyber attacks, and I'm not so sure are we so good as we think that we are. Usually we notice later that something was terribly going wrong, but it takes maybe years to understand. So I'm a bit skeptical, honestly, how good we are. I'm glad if people think that we are so good, but I'm a bit skeptical. Altogether, maybe which gives you a bit more optimism is if you follow what has happened in Ukraine since a big scale war 2022. I haven't seen any big successes from that side, that electrical grid is not collapsing, and nothing so super what we thought that Russians will be able to do. That has been surprise maybe. So, but maybe I'll stop here with saying that I'm personally more worried still about Humint and Sigint because cyber is somehow very sexy word, but human intelligence is quite often more dangerous. But it's just my experience. Maybe I'm completely wrong in that, but we need more to concentrate to SIGINT and HUMINT.
Well, give us some sense of Russian tactics and techniques. They're sort of a storied intelligence service. They've obviously had a lot of success in the West in the past. Is it just old-fashioned trying to find someone who is disaffected with the government or needs cash or is in debt? How are the Russians so successful in penetrating a lot of these frontline states?
There's many reasons, but one of the reasons is that they just simply have so many agents, even though some are corrupt and lazy and so on. But it's just incomparable how many agents they have. That's the most worrisome. That if you take just FSB with the border guard, and border guard is also part of FSB. So all those people moving in and out from Russia, they are under scrutiny of FSB. And if something is known about specific person, there starts recruitment in a way already in the border, going through the personal data and all what is needed. But second thing here is that you will always find people who are not happy about your government. And for some people, it's just enough money.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not very substantial money even. We have seen some Russian-speaking people who've been recruited by the GRU on the basis basically of patriotism, that one certain case, guy was approached and said that, your grandfather worked for GRU during the Second World War. Now it's also going almost like a Third World War. You need to help us. You need to help Mother Russia. So patriotism plays sometimes quite important role there. And also, new phenomenon is maybe past 10, 15 years, so-called conservative values, which seems a bit like a strange, but there's a bunch of people who truly believe that Russia is supporting conservative Christian values, even though KGB harassed Orthodox Church all the time, and leadership of Orthodox Church are part of special services and so on. So they are very flexible how to approach. They do investigation. They see what's the possible weak spot, or take our case with Deniss Metsavas, which was also covered quite extensively in the media. It was before the big war. He had relatives in Smolensk. He go there, and one night he went to have some party at the local nightclub, and guess what? Later he went to home with one lovely lady. And next morning there was knock on the door, and so-called militia, as they introduced themselves, said, your girlfriend said you raped us, you raped me, and now there's two chances whether you are going to sit behind the bars or you start cooperating with us because we can help you. And so sadly, he said that, I'll start cooperating with you. And second thing, when he returned to Estonia, he was stupid enough not to confess that.
Yeah, I see.
And so it went on, and eventually he was arrested together with his father, who was former border guard officer. So there are many, many different issues. And new phenomenon, maybe after 2022, is that, as you know, mainly from Europe, European Union countries, a big number of Russian intelligence officers were kicked out. And now they have less intelligence officers in Europe. So now they are using common criminals as access agents or like so-called proxy agents that they recruit them through social networks, as Polish have told in media that young Ukrainian refugees who have a Russian-speaking background, they've been recruited to social networks with a few hundreds of euros.
Yeah.
So different opportunities. They are highly capable of figuring out what to do. They won't stop. If you stop them somehow, after a couple of days, they will come out with new ideas and actions.
Well, it sounds like it's just to summarize, the mass. They have many, many people that they can send at their enemies. And then these brutal techniques, you mentioned the honeypot, and that's obviously got a storied history that people are interested in. I wonder if you might talk a little bit about, and I want to get to how things have changed since the invasion of Ukraine. But before we get there, I wonder if you might talk a little bit about Russia's sabotage and subversion activities, not just in Estonia, but across Europe. Here in the United States, most people just believe it's about Russia trying to sow chaos and mayhem, and maybe the uptick in sabotage operations is to punish people who've given arms and assistance to the Ukrainians. But talk a little bit about the gray zone activities that Russian uses, and what are they after?
I guess there are many different ideas or strategies behind that. For example, if we talk about what happened in Germany, that they had planned to assassinate head of Rheinmetall. This is definitely so-called targeting killing. They will find who's the target, who's most valuable to them to assassin, because he's leading a big military company. This is very specific. Those people who have seen that killing them will maybe slow down Western support to Ukraine. Second part is maybe something which is also having different ideas or strategies behind. If you take some supermarket arsons in Poland or sabotage of railways, so to get some fear for the local people. This is second, and through that fear, I guess there is secondary idea that you can later, after those actions, manipulate with public opinion that your government can't protect you and your health and property is not protected and public order is gone, and maybe the idea is that it will help to raise to the political power more populist parties which usually tend to support Russian ideas. So it might be secondary idea behind that. And thirdly, I guess we have to see that most of the time this is tailor-made cases. If you take, for example, Estonia, as you know, we have very difficult history, especially when we speak last events during the Second World War. And there is definitely different ideas among Russian-speaking and Estonian-speaking community. And so they try to paint with Nazi symbolics, some statues, red paint, and different stories, or they vandalized our Minister of Interior personal car, and there was later people convicted because of that, and they confessed that idea was originally to vandalize around 10, 15 well-known people around Estonia. And probably also the idea behind that was that, public order is out of hands of police and security forces. Simply put, to raise some tensions. But when we take Polish case, then it's definitely easy to understand that, because Poland is a big hub, transit corridor to Ukraine, I guess disruption of transport people and goods to Ukraine must be or is still the number one priority there.
Yeah, I see.
It's mainly tailor-made, I would say, but what is common that if you can't achieve so-called primary target, then simply put, make Europeans' life miserable.
I see. And ultimately, it helps undermine support for Ukraine if
Yeah,
publics are
that
believing
do
that.
your own business. Don't worry about Ukraine would be the idea.
We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back with more of our discussion with Arnold Sinisalu.
Beacon Global Strategies is the premier national security advisory firm. Beacon works side by side with leading companies to help them understand national security policy, geopolitical risk, global technology policy, and federal procurement trends. Beacon's insight gives business leaders the decision advantage. Founded in 2013, Beacon develops and supports the execution of bespoke strategies to mitigate business risk, drive growth, and navigate a complex geopolitical environment. With a bipartisan team and decades of experience, Beacon provides a global perspective to help clients tackle their toughest challenges.
Well, give us some sense of what's changed since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or at least the second Russian invasion of Ukraine. Was Estonia surprised that Russia invaded in the way they did, or do you believe that this is just part of a incremental advances that Russia is going to try and make to threaten NATO eventually?
Yeah, before answering directly, I guess we have to go back to history in a way, not very long time ago to history, but I guess beginning of 90s was no return point when you remember the first Chechen war. Russians committed a lot of war crimes, crimes against humanity there, and nobody was responsible. Nobody was taken as responsible for that. And obviously, at that time, nuclear weapons were all around the Soviet Union, and the West was worried about making deal with former Soviet republics that nuclear weapons will be given back to Russia. But going further, I became first time worried when Putin came to power, and one of the first things what he did was change of Russian anthem to the Soviet Union one. I thought, what the hell is that? It's very strange that this is not part of new Russia. And then I guess I became shocked in that real sense, 2008. When Russians used opportunity to invade Georgia, and then it was clear to me that Russia is not holding back using military force against foreign countries, because Chechnya, in a way, yes, it was very bad what they did. Anyway, it was internal case in a way. You can somehow accept that. But going and invade a big part of Georgia afterwards, I had no illusion anymore that sooner or later they will start doing something. And something else to mention here, I've been reading a lot of Russian propaganda materials, and they get obsessed with Samuel Huntington's book about the clash of civilizations. And Huntington says something like that without Ukraine, Russia can't be an empire anymore. And that seems to be obsession for the Russian chauvinists, that, at any cost, we have to take Ukraine. And if you follow what happened then, first 2003, 2004, this so-called Orange Revolution, and then 2013, 2014, annexation of Crimea and war in eastern part of Ukraine. So it shouldn't be any surprise altogether. And also, as I mentioned, for Russia, And for most part of Russian people, the greatness of Russia and might of Russia is more important than personal well-being. My life could be miserable, but if Russia is so-called great again and the rest of the world is afraid of Russia, this is something which is mattering for them.
Yeah, a part of national pride. I want to come back in a second to the themes of Russian disinformation, but how did the Estonians feel about what Russian designs are? You've mentioned Transnistria and Georgia. Do you and the other leaders in Estonia believe if Putin had been successful in taking Ukraine, that he would have possibly come into some of the Baltics or Poland? Or do you think he would have stopped there because he's fearful of NATO?
It's hard to say because nobody can see through Putin's brain, but definitely restoring of Soviet Union is a grand strategy. And if they see opportunity, most likely they would do something to. I'm not saying that they would like to engage full-scale war against NATO at the moment. But if there will be some opportunities to do some nasty stuff, definitely they will do it. And most likely at the beginning, it would be something which is under Article 5. Some kind of hybrid warfare is going to continue, maybe in more rude way, more people get killed. But so-called plausible denial would be at the moment, which is targeting them or which is driving them. But in long term, if there would be somehow possible to destroy confidence to NATO and to separate the US and Europe, definitely that's number one priority for the Russia.
Yeah, okay. So it's really interesting what you said about some of the themes in Russian disinformation are that without Ukraine, Russia can't be an empire. You also mentioned this phenomenon, which is also present here in the United States, of, oh, wow, the Russians are really the most conservative that is worthy of being emulated. And they talk about the Orthodox Church as well. We've heard that here in the United States. What other themes, as you study, have you seen in Russian disinformation?
So there's a lot of different ideas. So part of conservative values, they are preaching that West is decadent, that identity politics is something which all Europeans are very worried, and Europeans are soft, they are not willing to fight, and they are very greedy, and they don't respect Christian values, and many ideas are quite irrational. That there's some kind of satanist conspiracy in Europe and in US, and but most part of that they try to convince local population that West is warmongering against Russia, and the long-term West just wants to get Russian mineral resources, just steal Russian future, and sometimes very silly ideas. So they basically have for every targeting group own specific language or ideas. I highly recommend reading of Russian propaganda. Then you will see that Islam is taking over Europe, and European people are afraid of Islamists, and of course they are afraid, but that this is not so bad situation at the moment, and sometimes even that our living standard is much better than in West, and the part of the problem is that by some statistics, less than 20% of people have so-called passports which you can use going to abroad. Very few people have ever been outside of Russia. Maybe they have been in Turkey or in Egypt or in Central Asia, but very few have been in US or in Western Europe. So they have absolutely no idea how West look like. And I guess that's all together. And also big part of that is history. For example, if you listen those stories, what they tell you about how they won Second World War, they don't mention Lend-Lease and special American aid during the Second World War, and all the respectable historians in West, they say that this help was very important. Of course, Russians sacrificed a lot of Russians, and not just Russians, all the people of Soviet Union that time, they sacrificed a lot.
How is it that the Russians are so successful in disinformation? I mean, we, of course, have our own issues in the United States with previously Russia TV, RT, and Sputnik, the news service. And then conversely, why are we in the West so bad? It feels like we're never able to counter this type of messaging from Russia.
I guess many reasons behind. Maybe number one is that in democratic society, you just can't create some kind of like Russia had during the Soviet time, central television, that just one voice. Of course, now they have many more voices, but people have, in a way, brainwashed during the last 25 years, the same messages going on, that West is enemy and so on. And of course, huge money has spent. There was some statistics that some years ago, RT was better financed, for example, than Fox News. Is it true or not? I had not time to check that, but they are spending a lot of money. And I guess that all together. And but the number one priority is internal public, of course. Of course, they are doing harm to West, but in long term, I guess culture and education will stop that. But we also need to invest a lot of money to speak about what's going on. And secondly, maybe we have to be more critical about ourselves, in that sense that internal security services must act more. We had one case where so-called Russian agent Sergei Seredenko, quite interesting case. At the beginning, it was seen that he was just usual Russian-speaking guy, Estonian citizen, even though, but anyway, who was preaching some strange Russian messages. And later we were able to prove that actually behind of his activities are Russian special services, that he was simply Russian agent. And so what I'm trying to say here is that we need to more investigate those so-called useful idiots, that not every time so-called useful idiot is idiot. He's just simply Russian agent. Yeah, and this is something we need to do much, much more.
Well, as we begin to wrap up here, let me put to you the big question. What does Estonia consider the greatest threat from Russia? For example, is it the use of Russian-speaking citizens to undermine the government? Is it a coup? Is it eventual invasion of NATO countries if we don't stand by Ukraine? Give me some sense about what your rank order fears are.
Of course, number one is direct military attack over Estonia or the Baltics or NATO itself. Maybe secondary is manipulation with Russian-speaking community. They try hard. they are not very successful in that sense. A big part of Russian speakers are very well integrated to Estonian society, and nobody wants to Russians to so-called liberate them. Maybe thirdly, if we screw up in a way in our internal politics, then to seize momentum and try to do some kind of coup, that would be third place. And then all other nasty things, arson, targeted killing of leaders, just, I don't know, poisoning, so whatever. But definitely nothing is comparable with direct military invasion or attack toward Estonia or the Baltic states.
So what is it that you think those of us in the West need to know that you don't believe that we understand? You're on the front lines. You know the Russians better probably than we do. If you were to urge something on policymakers here in Washington, what advice would you have for us?
Maybe it sounds a bit rude that, but they look like us, but they are not like us. The mentality behind Russian chauvinism is completely different. No agreement is binding to them. If you take just this Budapest memorandum that give nuclear weapons to us, we will protect your constitutional order. That never happened. So cheating your adversary or enemy is like good thing to do. And maybe main point here is that only thing they truly understand is military power and power itself. Nothing else. And only US and China are probably those countries whom they're really afraid of. Nobody else.
Yeah, I see.
All other countries are meaningless to them.
What's the view in Estonia about the war in Ukraine? Is it that the Russians are making incremental progress and Ukraine is running out of artillery, for example? How do you all see the state of the war?
I guess there is no single view on that. Some people are very worried that Ukraine is losing that war. Some people saying that they still have possibility to win the war, of course, with the help of West. And very different views, but general view is that people are worried what's happening to Ukraine, that independent nation, which was given some guarantees by the Budapest memorandum, is basically said that you are now in your own.
Yeah.
And this is very bad example, and we'll see what's going to come, but most of Estonians also knew that as our forest brothers fought in the woods many years after Second World War, same happened in western part of Ukraine many years till the 70s. So Ukrainians are not easy in that sense that they won't stop fighting even if I don't know, some more parts of Ukraine will be taken over. They just simply won't stop. In long term, I'm optimist.
Last question. Do you believe, or what is the common Estonian view about Donald Trump's efforts to try and broker peace between the Russians and the Ukrainians? Here we talk about, if it's even possible, maybe ceasefire is one end of the spectrum all the way to peace deal. I sort of see things at best being maybe a temporary ceasefire is achievable. What's your sense of what the art of the possible is?
Oh, it's really hard to say because I'm definitely not representing all Estonians. But
Yeah.
After Biden administration, maybe there was a big hope that Trump will use more force to force Russians stop the war. And the way so far, what has happened is surprise that why you are giving all possible means to the Russians even before proper negotiations started. I guess maybe surprise is biggest word here.
Yeah. Okay, great. Arnold, thank you so much. We've learned an enormous amount from you. We're so glad that you're an ally of the United States, and we're thrilled about the success that you've had over your career and Estonia's record against aggressive Russian services. So thank you so much for walking our audience through this today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That was Arnold Sinisalu. I'm Michael Allen. Please join us next week for another episode of Intelligence Matters.
Intelligence Matters is produced by Steve Dorsey with assistance from Ashley Berry. Intelligence Matters is a production of Beacon Global Strategies.